Even though I'd been going to model train shows nearly my entire life, this year would be the first time I'd make it out to Springfield, Massachusetts, home of the largest model train show in the country. After a couple months of planning, I'd finally made plans with myself, Jay, who you already know, and Phil, one of the masterminds behind the amazing layout at the Golden State Model Railroad Museum. He's an incredible modeler to boot. We hopped our flight Friday morning despite weather warnings. After a moderately disrupted trip involving a broken down 80 monorail at Newark Airport and a canceled taxi ride from the microscopic and decrepit Windsor Locks Amtrak station, we made it safely to our hotel, ready for the next day. Saturday began early. The drive through the idyllic countryside to the venue was memorably beautiful, until we'd hit something we've never seen before, a major traffic jam for model trains. We bailed early, thinking it would be faster on foot, even in the cold. After a far too long walk, thanks to several closed entrances to the expo center, we finally made it. We entered the first open building partly for the warmth and were immediately taken back by the scale of the whole place. Ahead of us, the Atlas booth beckoned us in. There we checked out their new offerings, dumpsters on flat cars, Santa Fe U28 CGs, and a sealed window coach variant of the Branchline heavyweight kits, which I'm looking forward to. We then orbited around the huge Dry Hill Modular Club adjacent to the display and were very impressed by the realistic length trains, the beautifully modeled highways, and the gigantic windmill. Adjacent to that, we then got lost in thousands of models for sale down the first aisle, but didn't buy anything just yet. Into the main agricultural hall, we were overwhelmed by the modular layout set up and humming along. Here we met up with James, a longtime friend of mine and an annual visitor to this incredible show. Not only was he our guide through the madness, he generously served as our taxi driver for the rest of the trip, an absolute godsend given the crazy weather. First up was a quick look at the Woodland Scenics booth, followed by being flabbergasted by the gigantic G-scale modern equipment hauling around the Hudson Valley large-scale club layout. Check out this grain silo as tall as I am. They also had a refinery scene with fuel tanks the size of actual oil drums. Incredible work. Size and scale was a big theme at the show. Up next was an uncompressed stone arch bridge that went on forever, part of the New England H.O. Fremo Modular Group. This has apparently been a years-long project and looks fantastic. There is also a rather beautiful urban switching district with lots of period-correct details to drink in. Check out the abandoned tram tracks crossing the switching district, a great touch. Of note are also the realistic depth brick buildings, something to keep in mind next time you build a DPM kit. Next, the NE Lug Modular Lego group was phenomenal, so much so that we came back on Sunday to enjoy it even more. They do fine-scale modeling with Lego bricks, roughly to 1/48 O scale. The creative problem-solving to make recognizable pieces of rolling stock is off the charts cool to see. Of particular note is this restored Central New Jersey 060 and this Alco GEIR box cab. And check out those B&O M53 wagon top boxcars and that N34 covered hopper. The selection of steam was also breathtaking, all put together so beautifully with hundreds, if not thousands, of Lego bricks. Next up was the Reading Technical Society's masterpiece of a layout. Modeling line-side industries so incredibly convincing is such a rare sight on the modular layout world, but the attention to detail really makes this layout outstanding. This coal breaker scene was particularly nice, featuring this little bean of a steeple cab handling the cars. The Bessemer Process steel mill and adjacent ingot mill were incredible. They were featured in a modeling magazine a few years ago, and it was so inspiring to see the steel mill modeling approaching the size and scale it should be depicted. The Hershey chocolate plant and amusement park modules were also impressive. The silos looming over both sides of the main line was quite a sight to see. Next, I discovered the booth of Master-Built Models, who import Sprachina and other HO-scale model vehicles, a lot of which I hadn't seen before. I couldn't resist buying a few items, which I'll feature later. Adjacent to them was the 187 Scale Vehicle Club, which has frankly an overwhelming display of literally thousands of beautiful models parked on their folding tables. I wish I had time to come back and look at them more in depth. My attention was redirected to this gorgeous live steam locomotive parked next to them in the hall from the Pioneer Valley Live Steamers, alongside skits where they were showing off at the show. Just look at the size of that hopper. We wandered back into the center of the show and orbited around the impeccable Northeast Corridor Historical Society Modular Club. Their meticulously modeled catenary really makes for a cool look, as does the graphic design on the fascia to really tie the layout together well. I was particularly impressed with the Crum Lynn station, seen here. Next, we followed the curvature of the Fremo N-scale modules past this lovely Sonoran Desert Canyon module set, very inspiring for the Alta. I really like how the railroad carves its way through the scene versus just being flat. We also walked past these modules, which look like satellite images and were pasted right onto the module, so it's all in one-to-one proportional scenery, which could be realistically achieved. We zoomed past the Whittle Shortline booth and other great layouts before heading into the second building, which was filled with thousands and thousands of people milling around buying trains. I made contact with home shops, which was pretty exciting for me and potentially for all of you as well. I also said hello to my editor Otto and friends over at White River. To my delight, they had just published my article about the RSC2M kit bash in this month's edition of Railroad Model Craftsman, so go grab yourself a copy. After a confusing line for lunch, we wandered onto the wonderful booth of the Center for Railroad Photography and Art. For those who may not know, they publish a quarterly magazine that's filled with excellent railroad writing, photography, and art. They also hold events with prominent artists and photographers regularly. I'll let you in on a secret. The beautiful magazine was actually co-designed by me. It's one of the graphic design projects I'm most proud of, and it continues to be beautiful under the careful care of Scott and the friends at the CRPA. You really should subscribe to their magazine. It's a treasure in the mail 4 times a year, and I'm not just saying that because I helped design the magazine. I then picked up some great detail parts from Crow River Models before wandering around the rest of the show, past the New England T-Track modules for a bit, talking with Pico, and then being blown away by the new Westside Shea in the LGB booth. Talk about a gorgeous model people have wanted forever. Absolutely stunning detail. Also on display was one of my favorite European locomotives to see, the Czech 498 class Mountain. Next, we went into the third building, which had stuff for sale, both great and, crappy. Working our way in, we wandered past the stunning modular layout put together by the Central New York Modelers of Distinction, a name they deserve. It has a great East Coast mid-century flavor to it, and it was festooned with awards. I particularly liked this demolished row house scene and the town at the bottom of the gorge, seen here. At the far end of the building was Arlo's beautiful O-scale modular layout, one of the most perfectly sized little short-line traction layouts I've ever seen. Full of kit-bashed electric locomotives and structures, it was such a delight to see. They were messing around with an ALP, putting up the pan on functional overhead and attempting to switch with it. Fun to witness this hysterical event. We chatted for a while, and later on I met one of my patrons, Charles, who had painted up an Alta O-scale boxcar with decals I'd sent him a few months ago, and it looks spectacular, especially on Arlo's layout. I'm so humbled by everyone's enthusiasm for the Alta at the show. If you're one of the many friends and fans of the Alta who came up to say hello, I really have to thank you so much for doing so. Getting to see some of the projects you were working on, or just nerding out about the Alta together, was a blast. Our shared enthusiasm for the hobby is what keeps me going, and it was wonderful to put faces to names as well. I'm so humbled by it, keeping me driven to continue to write and produce things for you to be inspired by. We walked past this incredible restored GM New Look bus on our way into the final building, which had most of the manufacturers in it. It was already late in the afternoon, and rumors of the heavy snowstorm were swirling around the show. Unfortunately, the building was in crisis packing mode, and amongst the incredible displays were vendors hauling stuff I probably wanted to buy out of the show before I could do so. We visited KD, Bachman, Bowser, BLI, and Rapido. I also perused a bunch of different booths and bought a few treasures, but sadly, right at 5, the 5-chime horn blew, and that was the end of Saturday. Sunday was an entirely different beast. It had snowed through the night and was piled up. James scooped us and carefully drove us first to a great diner and then into the show. There, we were met with desolation. Over half of the vendors in each building had disappeared, which was a bummer. It did allow us to focus on who was left, and that made for some great deals. We started in on the last building we'd been in yesterday and worked in reverse. The far smaller crowds meant we got to talk in depth with more manufacturers and dig deeply through the remaining dealers. We even got to see the carcass of the legendary New England, Berkshire, and Western layout being parted out. It was tragic to see, but it was also nice to get a piece of modeling history for the workshop. One particularly fascinating booth this year was Athearn, with their new 19th century rolling stock and Amtrak California cars. It was hinted that Athearn wants to do entirely newly tooled small steam to match said cars, so that might be a treat to see in a few years. We plodded through the snow to other buildings wherein we were met with the same empty halls. We ended up going back through each building on a shopping run, grabbing a variety of HO, N, and full-scale bits. Being able to check out the modular layouts without crowds or people bumping into me was nice, though. By early afternoon, everybody was flagging, and just like the Lionel Lion, we were headed for the exit. Even with the diminished scale of the show, we only left an hour before they fully closed. James again graciously offered to drive us to dinner and back to the hotel, and the snow was already falling hard. Driving towards a strip of restaurants we thought might be open, each one we passed was closed until we happened upon this great little pizza place, where we had an excellent pizza as the snow continued to pile up. One harrowing drive in twilight whiteout conditions later, and we were safely back at the hotel. We'd order dinner, but it never arrived. And in desperation, we made dinner from what we could buy from the hotel snack bar. As I went back into the hotel's breakfast room to microwave it, I spotted one of Santa Fe's first diesels on the table with a bunch of guys around it. I said, "Whoa, that's Santa Fe's Amos and Andy," and everybody turned around and was completely surprised that I knew what those were. And after a beat, someone said, "Wait, are you in Urban Era?" And from then, the rest of the evening was filled with all sorts of great conversations and modeling fun with a group of people who turned out to be the movers and shakers in the Gmod train build community. Serendipity is what made Amherst special to me, and I really found it an absolute treat for those reasons. I made a lot of new friends, put faces to internet handles I'd been talking to for years, and got to talk candidly with manufacturers about the various finer points of the hobby. Our trip back was far luckier than most. James drove us to New Haven's Union Station, and then we took the Northeast Corridor down to Penn Station, over the Hellgate Bridge again, this time in daytime, treating us to one of the best views you can get through a train window. A quick transfer to NJT got us to Newark Airport, and a few short hours later we were back on the ground in SFO. As we landed, news trickled in of many of my friends getting stranded overnight or longer due to weather, so I was very thankful we made it back despite the snow, somehow even smoother than we'd arrived. The heartiest thanks goes out to James. As friends, we've known each other for over a decade, but this is our first time being able to hang out in person. It was a delight spending time together. My thanks also goes out to everyone who reached out and said hello during the show. It really made my weekend. And of course, thanks to all of you for your support here on YouTube and on Patreon. We made this possible to fly across the country for a model train show. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the Patreon. Support from viewers like you at any level makes these videos possible. This has been an Urban Era, and this was my adventure to and from the Amherst Model Railroad Show 2026.